Hey, this is Trevor from Halifax, calling in to say that I support Creative Control on Patreon because I think long-form arts journalism is a crucial part of music culture, and there's simply not enough of it out there today. Vish is a master interviewer, he lands great guests, and he has his finger on the pulse of the ever-changing music landscape, both here in Canada and abroad. For all of these reasons and many more, I think you should support Creative Control on Patreon too.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and I will love him no matter what you do. And now he has me on the record saying that.
Rick White is a gifted visual artist, multi-instrumentalist, producer, songwriter, and singer, currently based in rural Ontario. Originally from Moncton, New Brunswick, White co-founded the powerful and influential rock band Eric's Trip, later formed Elevator to Hell, aka Elevator Through Hell and Elevator, and he wrote, arranged, and sang songs for the Unintended, a supergroup that also featured the Sadies and Greg Keeler of Blue Rodeo. After releasing a trilogy of records as Rick White Album on Blue Fog Records between 2005 and 2009, White seemed to disappear from public performance and music making, tending instead to an incredible audio and video archive and dispatching such things onto the internet from out in the country. But in the spring of 2019, White re-emerged with a collaborative album called The Opening with the musician Eiyn Sof, which he put out on Blue Fog Records, which he now co-runs with his partner Brian Taylor. And later that fall of 2019, Rick assembled a deluxe vinyl reissue of the Unintended's brilliant 2003 album. Now, Rick did me the rare treat of inviting me out to his home in southern Ontario for a chat about his life and times, the music he's made with Eric's Trip, Elevator to Hell, the Unintended, and on his own, his new obsession with building amazing remote control trucks, and the popularity of his brilliantly constructed models, why he might be back, his future plans, and more. A part of the E1 Podcast Network with the support of listeners like you who subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, plus in-kind support from CFRU 93.3 FM, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 500th episode of Creative Control, featuring one of my earliest musical heroes and first interview subjects, Rick White, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Rick. How's it going?
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. It's nice to be here. Where in the world are we exactly? I mean, where are we? What is this place?
It's a nice country oasis that I was lucky to find myself in. I don't know how long ago, probably 15 years ago or so now.
It's beautiful. It's lovely. I mean, before this, were you in Toronto?
Well, I lived in Toronto with Tara in 2000.
Yeah.
We did in late 2000 because we ran out of money to live down in East, so Tara could get work in Toronto. I just followed her up here.
Okay.
And after we split apart, I went home for a little while, but I had met Brian while we were up here, and we started our little record label there together. And
Blue Fog.
Yeah. And then he bought this house, and I came out here helping him to move once, and we just kind of worked out that I got to live here.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I just, I know this might seem self-conscious on my part, but is there any chance that you moved out to such a remote location to get away from me specifically? I just want to make sure that that's not the case.
No.
Okay.
But I really didn't enjoy living, besides meeting good people down in Toronto, I didn't like living on Queen Street there too much.
Yeah.
It was just so, we went from having our own house in Moncton with a studio and everything in it to having to share a little apartment with like 6 of us.
Was Dallas Good of the Sadies among the people you lived with at some point?
Yeah. When we first moved there, it was him and Amanda, his girlfriend, and Greg Keeler and Kate Boothman.
They all lived there?
Yeah. But they weren't there very often, so.
This house sounds like it might have been the birthplace of your band, The Unintended, because you mentioned Dallas and Greg. Yeah. Is that where that started?
Yeah, for sure. Because when Dallas, we started working on Darkness Light together, the Elevator record, just because we were living together and hanging out all the time, And then we had the idea of making a folk rock album, kind of more like Simon and Garfunkel kind of stuff, which is not what The Unintended ended up sounding like too much, but it was the start of it for sure, because Greg would always be around, and he offered us, to come out at his house and record. Yeah, so it was just a lot of demos I had written after Darkness Light. Because Darkness Light kind of was half and half, it was half the heavy early stuff, and then side 2 was kind of more like what The Unintended ended up sounding like. Like a little more light and acoustic-y kind of.
Is it true? I think, I follow you on social media. As much as you're sort of away from whatever, the music biz out here, I think I read that maybe there's an unintended reissue. Is that what you're working on? Yeah,
we finally are putting it out on vinyl.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Any day now we're supposed to get the copies in finally. We were going to do a double, but then we decided to just keep it like the way it was and to put a digital version with a lot more of the extra stuff.
There's extra stuff.
Well, there's one outtake from the album itself that we didn't put on the album because it was wasn't working out as well.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a few demos that Dallas and I did in the apartment, and the Lightfoot covers we did.
Yeah, with the Constantines, like the split. Yeah.
And then a few live songs. So there's about 21 songs now altogether, that are going to be on like a Bandcamp kind of version of the album. But we put one of the demos on the vinyl too.
Okay. So that's coming out any time now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a nice little demo Dallas and I did in the apartment one night. The 2 guitars.
Is it a demo of a song we've heard?
I don't think it's ever come out anywhere. It's Another Love Song is the song.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a good, I think it didn't make the first album, so we were thinking of writing for a second album, which I have a lot of demos for, which ended up being on my first Rick White album.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of a lot of those are demos for a potential second Unintended record.
Right. Okay.
That never came.
So for those who are listening who don't know, the Unintended was, sorry, I'll explain things.
For sure.
Unintended was the Sadies and you and Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo.
Yeah.
And when you say that you did this demo, I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, as is Dallas. Did you play drums and everything on this demo? Or was
no, the demo is just the 2 guitars kind of in a vocal and me singing.
Right.
But I did do, demos for the whole Unintended record by myself before, which was kind of nice working with the Sadies because they were so professional and so used to working with like other artists like Nico Case, and that I just gave them demos. Like Mike and Sean would just learn them right off the demo, and then we were laying them down pretty quick.
We're kind of, it's fine. We're bouncing all over the place temporarily, maybe a little bit, but that's fine. I feel like you do that a little bit too in your work, to be honest. I don't know what era things are from. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous that I was going to keep focused good today because my brain's a little all over the place.
Oh no, you're doing just fine.
You'll keep on track.
I'll try to keep us on track and focus on things. But I was going to say that you have a long history with the Sadies. You've done artwork for them. You've written songs for them. On their last album, they wrote a song that is a letter to you.
Oh yeah, right.
They miss you.
I know. Yeah, that was strange here, and I felt like God. I've become like that mysterious Syd Barrett character. They're writing about like, oh, he's like a hermit. And I guess I realized I was. When I first heard it, I was sort of shocked, but then I was like, oh.
Did you hear it when it came out? Like on the album? Is that the first time you heard it?
Dallas sent me a version, I think, of the song just to say like, is this okay? You're doing this, and I was, it's flattering in a way, but also, like I said, it seems like, what have I become?
Well, I was thinking about the last time I believe that I saw you perform, and I think it was the Blue Fog Recordings Review at Lee's Palace in 2010. Is that the last time you really played?
Yeah, I think I might have did a couple little solo shows. Like I remember playing with Julie at a restaurant there when she had a little residency in Toronto.
In Toronto, yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been 2012.
Okay.
But I think that was the last time. The last time I recorded anything was when I was working on Julie's So Many Days album. It was just me and her out here.
Yeah.
And she did guitar and voice, and I did the band, sort of.
Right. As you do, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the last time I recorded really anything. I kind of gave it up. I think I was finding making music too gray, kind of like it didn't have any definitive. I don't know. I wanted to create something that was a little more. I don't know. I started making like those model trucks. I don't know if anyone's seen my Headquake.
You make model trucks? I didn't know that.
I scratch build these RC trucks, and I made a YouTube channel because I filmed them going through the woods.
Oh.
I don't know. I got into this weird. I felt like I was a kid again. You know, I was getting so much pleasure in just carving these wooden. I was making them out of wood.
I mean, there's plenty of, as we're sitting on your deck here, your back deck, and there's plenty of wood. There's lots of trees and foliage. So
I got whole trails made in the woods.
Really?
There with like they look like little miniature truck trails.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to see that before.
I'll show you
Okay.
after, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's great.
But anyway, I ended up getting like, I think I have 150,000 followers on my YouTube channel now. Like I'm 100 times more famous for RC trucks, for remote controlled trucks than I am for music.
Well, I feel badly that you're a hard guy to keep track of. You do a lot. I mean, even in your, we've described a kind of hermit-like state, which maybe we can address a bit further in a moment. But like, I keep up with your social media and stuff for the most part. I didn't know about this RC trucks thing. It's surprising.
I know. I kept it sort of separate for quite a while.
Right, but you are kind of tending to, I'd say, your personal musical archives. Like we mentioned the Unintended record, and you just put out a record with Eins Off that I hope we'll talk about too. But you are busy, right? Like I'm busy in the background, so to speak.
I spent a lot of time, going through, in the last couple of years, going through my old DAT tapes, all my masters from the 90s, and just finding all this stuff that I'm still as proud of as I ever was. Like I'm not the type to look back on my old music and go, oh, cringe, like
yeah.
I still think it's all great, and I find the more awkward it is, I like it more now. The more it reminds me of something that could be embarrassing almost, but you're kind of like, it's very intriguing to hear the old music, and I started that Bandcamp site just to put out all this old stuff and remaster it again and try to get it sounding better.
Yeah.
It's fun.
You and I have done a few interviews over the years. I don't know if we've done it. I think we have. Yeah, we've done a fair number. And you've said some things to me in those interviews that have really stuck with me, to be honest. I think about them almost all the time.
We had a pretty good Eric Strip one, I think.
Yeah, we did. We did that. I did a pretty comprehensive, what was it, an Exclaim magazine timeline thing.
Yeah.
So in some ways I may ask you, just for people who don't know much about you, I may ask you questions I already know the answers to on some level. But all that said, one of the things you said to me, which I found intriguing, particularly in this day and age, is you said you think that bands and musicians should learn to do everything themselves, not just play their. I just think that, I think about it all the time. You were like, I think bands should know how to record themselves. I think bands should do their own artwork. They should really take ownership over everything, which is what you do. And not everyone has your talent and skill, I will say that. But
I just think it's nice to hear it. They're like, if you heard a band's first record, it would be, they'd learn as they went.
It's public learning.
It would make sense.
We learn in public. Yeah. I just think that's pretty profound, because we live in an age in 2019, as we're speaking, where people tend to just make a thing at their house and put it up. Like they have the ability to upload whatever their instinctual idea is. And even like we're doing a podcast right now, I feel like there's a lot more appreciation for unmediated, less professional sort of, I don't mean to say that this doesn't sound professional or whatever. It's going to sound great, Rick. But I mean this kind of unfiltered, like direct.
Yeah, I love that. I think people are making albums in their house and it's not costing them anything. You can you don't have to save money, you don't have to borrow money or start these, you can make an album at home on your laptop for free. You can put it on Bandcamp or something, and it's all just up to you to sort of somehow promote it. Yeah. Which I think, and that's why I sort of have controversial opinions about digital music, like files and I think really people shouldn't worry about charging so much money for their digital files, because it's like, that should be more just a way to, you should feel glad that in this world of so much stuff out there that someone's even wanting to listen to your music.
Right, yeah.
And then, if you tour, go on tour and play shows, that's where you make money,
Ideally, yeah.
Sell T-shirts, make vinyl. But the file itself, it's like, I just like to have it out there, hear it. I hope people hear it.
Do you think that the way we consume sort of media now has anything to do with the way lo-fi sort of culture I think of, for me, lo-fi culture really had I mean, I came of age in the 90s, as you may know. Like, I remember seeing Eric's Trip at the Volcano in Kitchener, Ontario, and being, like, blown away. But, I mean, I'd read about it and all that stuff.
And it seemed so shocking to everyone at the time that we recorded on a 4-track.
Yeah.
And we actually had a record that was getting press,
Yeah. But everything about what was going on then seems to have come to the fore now. Like, the videos we share are people on their phones. Like, just rickety. It's sort of rickety. It's digital, so it's got kind of a...
Oh, man, I wish I had the ability to make video stuff like back in the 90s that we can now,
Yeah.
God, in the 90s we used to make videos. We had a little cheap video camera we used, and I had 2 old VCRs, and we used to, like, just to try to get crossfades and stuff, we used to have to film off the TV, and I just wished so much I had, like, some sort of machine that I could crossfade video and make cool videos, and now it's just so easy.
It is easy, but
it's great.
I think of people like you as being something like ahead of your time. Like, I think that stuff going on in the 90s is how we kind of consume, like the kind of it's not totally slick. It's raw on a level. Like, and I think of Love Terra and some of those early Eric's Trip albums. There's a rawness to it that seems to really resonate with how people make and consume things today. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Maybe because I find it's, when I watch documentaries now about people talking about the past, they have such a different view than your original view, back then.
Oh, yeah?
Well, it's just like, I probably didn't think of it the same when I was young. We were trying to, it's like, how can we do this for, just ourselves? And we just would figure it out at the time. But looking back now, I can analyze it a lot more. But when I made the Eric's Trip documentary, the movie, I remember people were like, "Why aren't you going to interview everybody, and talk about stuff?" And I really just wanted to put the footage, the original footage, and the music, and just to more have it like, this is the way it was, like, we're not going to talk about how we think it was. We're just going to show the way it was, kind of,
I see. That's interesting. Like, the years go by, you change, but that's going to alter your memory of...
Yeah, an Eric's Trip documentary with me, Julie, and Chris and Mark all thinking about what it was, like reflecting. Yeah. It wouldn't be the same as just someone watching the original footage and hearing the music and just making their own story up, because we were just young and passionate and dramatic. Everything was so... all we wrote about was, like, love songs still back then.
Did you feel...
we were teenagers.
Did you feel dramatic at the time? Like, I was listening to Love Terra, and I think famously, it must be Blinded. Julie's got this very raw vocal on Blinded, where she screams at one point, and it peaks. Like, it's overwhelming. It's like an overdriven... There's
a live version of that, too, in the documentary I was saying, where she just goes off and starts screaming so hard. Yeah. Mark claims he lost hearing that night at that.
Just from her screaming.
Yeah, because his monitor, his drum monitor was too loud, and she would start. I think it was just a release for Julie for the first time in her life, too, like, she... All of a sudden she was in this noisy band, and she was a very shy, young little teenage girl.
Yeah.
And then she was, she could, like, let loose now, and I don't know. I think the recording of that, I seem to remember... She was sort of mad or something, I bet, at something. Because I was trying to get her to to do something like, just try to, get into it. And so she just totally let loose on that take, and it was like... It's
rageful.
Yeah.
So you as a young... Like, I know you were just talking about reflecting and maybe how it's...
I don't mind doing it for this interview.
But when you think back, you mentioned Simon and Garfunkel earlier when we were talking about the Unintended. I know that folk music like that, maybe Gordon Lightfoot as well, was and Neil Young, those things were pretty key to you when you were starting out, right?
Yeah. Well, because all through my teenage years, I was into, like, what's my peers more, like listening to hardcore,
punk,
Dinosaur, and all up through the late 80s and early 90s even, we were listening to our contemporaries, like our My Bloody Valentines and stuff. And it was probably around 93 or so when I started smoking pot, and stuff, that we started, buying old vinyl for cheap at the record store.
Right.
All of a sudden we were getting high and we were listening to the Beatles and for the first time almost, because you're hearing these records that you remember from when you were a little kid, but you're hearing them again with new ears. And it's like all of a sudden all this stereo production and the Electric Prunes and the CCR records, like stuff was just blowing our minds more. And then we totally stopped listening to all our contemporaries. And like by the Forever Again album, the second Eric Strip record, that's kind of why it sounds the way it does. It's like we're trying to almost emulate a Beatles recording, like get more into the recording, which kind of made us sound nothing like our live show anymore, because it was like I got the mentality of like, well, live should be this forceful thing, but at records we should create these neat little landscapes, these kind of neat things. So Forever Again, I think, was more like that, and so were a lot of the Elevator records.
Right. Were you a White Album person in particular?
I do, yeah. That's one of my favorite, probably.
Is that the best Beatles? Like for you, is that? I know that I hate this. I can't answer these. I like Revolver a lot. I like the White Album a lot.
For sure.
When I think of Eric's Trip and the way the records unfolded, almost without a flow, I kind of think of the White Album more than anything else, because that was a really that record is so much of a collage.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and they were all kind of doing their own thing.
Yes.
I think by Forever Again, it was getting a little bit like that. We're up to Love Terra. People think of Love Terra as the first album.
Right.
It was actually we did all these cassettes before.
Yeah.
But it was always me. I was like doing everything and writing even the songs for Julie to sing and stuff. But by Forever Again, we started more. I was more like going, well, what do you have, Chris? Like, let's put some of your songs on and some of your Julie's songs, and so that became a little White Album-y more.
But so
by Purple Blue, we just wanted to make sort of a live record with Purple Blue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to get at your aesthetic generally, your approach to it, because you were in a hardcore punk band. Yeah. What was it called? With Mike Foystak?
The Underdogs.
The Underdogs. Yeah. And how did that come about? How did you decide to enter the world of hardcore punk? Because I only will frame this as such because you're a Beatles fan, you're a Simon and Garfunkel fan. When you're a kid, that stuff seems like on another level. They don't even seem like human beings, whereas hardcore and punk, very accessible. Like you feel like you can try and do that. Is that
the music I like now, I think that reminds me, like I mostly only listen to my old playlists of 60s and 70s music that I love, because it's more of soothes me mentally, it brings me back to like the music I remember when I was a little kid, because my mom always had the oldies radio on in the kitchen, so my first memories of music are all like doo-wop and 50s and 60s stuff.
So that was like that stuff is accessible. That stuff is not going to be as unsettling as what on some level even your poppier songs have they're a little askew in terms of contemporary culture, But I always have, unlike some people, I always have that pop element to my songwriting, my structures. Yeah, because it's always like I want it to be short. I want it to be kind of peppy. Yeah, I want it to have like verse, chorus, and not go too long. So I think I got that from listening to all that old, 60s pop music. But the noise is from punk.
Yeah, because when I hit the 80s, all of a sudden I was like buying circus magazines and thinking heavy metal was really cool, and I started growing my hair and got a leather jacket, and I was listening to Iron Maiden and metal stuff. But then once I heard hardcore for the first time, it was like, oh, fuck this metal stuff. Like, this is where it is. Like, this is just fast, and it's not as macho. It's like Dead Kennedys and stuff. I always thought of it, and we just wanted to go fast. And I think that held over to Eric's Trip and stuff, because we still were fast and noisy. We still had a hardcore element, even though it was Julie and I singing like Neil Young Comes a Time type of lyric over top of this noisy, noise and hardcore type of sound beneath it a bit.
When I think of the Dead Kennedys, I'm always sort of drawn to the reverb of it. Like there's a real rubberiness to that. It could have been a really straight, dry kind of recording, but it's really rubbery. Eric's Trip has this sort of like, you get into, if you're listening to an Eric's Trip record or a Rick White album or whatever it is, you enter a different sort of aesthetic universe. I feel like the sound of it's part of the song. I feel like the sounds you kind of captured and how you captured them. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, I try to kind of just create this, I don't know, like a soothing type of thing to me, what I like to hear. Yeah, that's a weird question, because like where does your taste and what you want to make your music sound like come from, really.
Yeah. I mean, on some level, it always sounded like you were doing the best you could with the resources available to you. Like when people,
it was like that for a lot of years.
Yeah, when the records were framed as 4-track recordings, people were like, "Well, that's what a 4-track recording sounds like." But you also did.
But I remember interviews where people would ask me, like, "Do you do that on purpose?" And I would say, like, "Well, that's all we have right now, and we want to do it ourselves."
Right.
And we slowly worked our way up, like, to getting a 1/4-inch 8-track, and then we got a 1/2-inch 8-track.
Right. So where does that impulse? I want to get at that a little bit, like, and I tried to earlier. But where does that impulse to do everything yourself? That was my original point. Was you said this thing that sticks with me all the time, and I've never.
Right, how bands should record
everyone should kind of
themselves
learn how to do, not learn, but just
because you see even
it's
videos.
a pure self-expression. Yes.
I wish people would just film a video of themselves, on their phone instead of. Cause some videos you watch of a band, you go, "Oh, I want to see their new video," and they're not in it, and it was made by someone else.
Right.
And you're like, well, how does this give me anything?
It's a film. It's like a detached
someone
film.
else's film that your music's in the background of. But
so where does that impulse come from for you? Do you think it's not like on some level, and I'm not accusing you of anything, but on some level, it's a certain level of control. Like you have a control impulse to be like, I'm managing all aspects of what I'm doing, which is great. Like I don't mean it
alienates you though from the music community, kind of like because everyone's built up this thing where they all work together. There's studios, there's promoters, agents, there's like mastering people.
Yeah,
and if you don't use any of that, they soon like they don't want anything to do with you really because you're not willing to be a part of the gang, the team. And we got that from Sub Pop when we were on Sub Pop too. Like they wanted us to be a part of the Sub Pop gang, and do everything. And we were like, we just want to make our own records and stay in Canada,
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you have to tour and do all this, You have to if we want to put our input in, like, if we're going to give you money, you have to work with us. But we were always bad at working with people, so we would lose. I remember Jonathan Poneman on one of our visits. He's like, "So are you?" Like he would have kept us. He really liked us, and he would have kept us for a long time. But he was like, I was getting to a point where I hated touring, and I was getting really anxiety in the States.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do this big new tour. They said, and he was like, "Well, so we'll part ways, or like." So we just kind of came to a mutual decision that we wouldn't be on Sub Pop anymore because
this was after Forever. No, this was after.
The Elevator, yeah.
Elevator's records were on Sub Pop as well. That's right.
We did. I think it was Vague Premonition we were working on, and they wanted to do they got us a big studio. We did it at a Chemical in Toronto.
Right.
Because we were willing to try to, give them a more professional sounding record for the last record. But when it came down to not wanting to tour and do anything, they just kind of helped us get the record out. But we knew before it even came out we were going to be not with them anymore.
Well, I remember going to the Purple Blue tour stop in Kitchener because I grew up in Cambridge.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember, was it possible that we already knew that was going to be the last tour? Like, is it possible fans knew that was it? Or did you guys announce it after? I can't remember.
When Eric Strip broke up?
Yeah.
Well, I think we had a tour booked in the States for 2 weeks in the spring of 96.
Yeah, kind of infamous.
And then we had a big Canada-wide, like a cross-Canada tour booked as well.
Yeah.
In the summer. And when I broke up with the band halfway through the tour in the States, Julie was just like, well, that's it. I don't want to do the Canadian shows either. Because I was willing to go back home and still do the Canada tour. I just didn't want to be in the States anymore. Which started my dislike of going down the States.
Have you been there? When's the last time you were in the United States?
No, I was never down there again until I think a few years ago I got talked into crossing from Vancouver down when we did one of those Eric Strip reunion tours.
Oh, yeah.
We did the Sub Pop, was it like their 20th anniversary?
Birthday party or whatever. Yeah.
So we did cross one more time. I did that, and we drove home the same day.
What's with the States? I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory these days, but at the time, you're talking like 25 years ago.
Pre 9/11.
Yeah, what was it about? I know it is. You go down there, as soon as I cross the border into Buffalo or Detroit, like for me, it's a visceral difference. Like it's pretty much the same.
I was probably overreacting. I think we were playing a couple more scarier kind of neighborhoods, clubs, like in Washington and different places that were getting me just too stressed out for no reason. Like it was just my own self, and I was newly with Tara, and Julie and I were apart now, and I felt like Eric's trip wasn't exciting anymore. Like we were probably the tightest we ever were because we were just going through the motions by that point.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to do something, new and exciting, and I don't want to be in this van with these. They're still my friends, but
I understand.
I like having partners in a band with me. Like whether it was Julie and in Elevator, it was like me, Mark, and Tara were like this really tight unit of three. Like Mark was my best friend, Tara was my best friend.
Right, and obviously you and Julie have, I think anyway, as far as I know, a very profound relationship. But when you've broken up with someone and you have to see them all the time, that cannot be easy. I mean,
yeah, it was a little weird. Like we were still being pretty close, but I don't know. I just didn't want to. I just felt like my interest was all in working on Elevator now.
Yeah.
And I was in the States being fearful, of being down there on this last Eric's trip tour. And,
right.
And I just overreacted and wanted to drive home and got everyone mad at me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were young, and that was a very complicated time for sure. I mean,
and I've always been very, I'll just do what I need to do, kind of like passionate.
Yeah. Yeah, I used the word control earlier, but I think it is these things you do out of a passion, and if you're not feeling it anymore, you don't want to do it anymore. Yeah.
And the other guys in the band didn't seem to mind. I mean, Mark, because he was going to be an Elevator anyway. Yeah. Chris didn't seem like he did, but I knew I kind of left him high and left him hanging a bit.
Yeah, he had Moonsocket going on, like he had his own kind of thing.
But I think more than anyone, he really missed being in Eric's trip.
Well, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but at that Purple Blue tour stop in Kitchener, Chris destroyed his bass. He destroyed his amp, and I have a chunk of his somewhere in my parents' house. I was like, what the hell was that? And I have the Ampeg decal or whatever you call it, right? I have it, and it's broken. But I was like, what? I don't know. I mean, it seemed like it was already.
He was always a mystery a bit, Chris. Like you never really knew what he was thinking, but he would release. He would release it when he needed to.
Right. Anyway, I don't mean to go back down dark roads.
Julie stayed mad at me, though, for quite a few years.
Right.
We took us till the 2001, I think, to make up really good.
And that's when you started making records together again. Well, no, a few years later, I guess.
Well, we did that first Eric's Trip reunion tour.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because we wanted to make up for the one we got rid of in 96 or skipped.
Right. I saw you guys at Sappy Fest, I believe, and that was great. But... there's always clamoring for bands like that to come back. We'll get to this. I want to talk about your supposed hermiting in a moment. But do you miss Eric's Trip? Like, do you miss doing that in any way? Is it something you want to do again?
It's not really something I want to do nowadays because I just feel like it's not in me anymore. And I'm sure the other guys would want to do it, And every couple of years I get calls from Peter Rowan or our old manager about, God, can you guys please get together? We're making all these offers, and like, I just don't want to. It just seems like something you do when you, especially Eric's Trip. It just seems so young, youthful, like the songs.
Absolutely.
All the lyrics are about, stuff we wrote about when we were 19 and 20 years old. And and we're just, I don't know, we're just too, you need that energy. Like, I don't really want to recreate energetic music.
You guys would, in your songs, express pain and joy and love for each other. And I always wondered, when you do that, when you have to do it again, like if you're in a position where you're like, your manager's like, you got to do this. We're going to make millions of dollars or whatever they say to them people. Like that's, every time you sing one of those songs, aren't you brought back to that original emotion?
Yeah. But, but it's more, I guess, just about just not feeling like it's appropriate anymore, like I'm acting or something. I'm just going through these motions. And
you, I think, like we said earlier, I think you have a particular penchant for the authentic. Like you want your shit to be real, and true.
I feel like I've put out so much truth in my records since especially.
Like, Okay, so that touring thing But you did tour with Elevator. Like you did end up doing shows.
Oh
with
yeah,
Elevator.
I think we played more Elevator concerts than we ever did with Eric's trip.
Yeah, and I saw you guys play like a house in a basement in Kitchener, and
Oh, yeah?
opening for Sloan, and a bunch of times I think maybe, and
Yeah, we used to do a couple of tours across Canada almost every year.
yeah, you are actually one of the first people I when I went to the University of Guelph, you guys played a show at the Albion.
Oh yeah,
And I interviewed Ian Blurton for a thing, and I interviewed you for a thing, and that's the first two real proper like for a print piece interviews I ever
cool.
did in my life.
Cool.
So like it's meaningful to me to get to talk to you at any point, frankly. And yeah, you were pretty forthcoming. And why did Elevator kind of slow down or stop? Was that because of the touring in some ways?
Yeah, and me getting a little bit burnt out on touring and stuff. And I don't know, this is not really private information, but Tara and Mark started fighting.
Right.
They didn't get along very good at the end, and
Right.
I remember I was just like constantly trying to be that middle person to soften everything Tara says before Mark and back, and then back to Tara.
Right. Opinionated people, everyone.
Yeah, for sure, and both very like quite the characters, you know.
Yes. I remember that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you had some volatility there.
Yeah, I mean, It wasn't too bad, but I just kind of got sick of that in a way, and.
Of course.
Plus, I didn't live. We were living in Toronto when that happened because this was around 2003 or 4. I think it was in the spring of 2004. We did our last tour.
Yeah.
And we were in Toronto. I didn't see Mark as much anymore, so we weren't as close of.
Is Mark still in
buddies.
Moncton?
Yeah.
He's always been in Moncton.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's he up to these days? Do you know?
Still working at the record store.
Still?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Playing in some. I'm not sure what bands he's in right now, but he always has like his old Purple Night band going with him and Ralph.
Yeah. A pretty eccentric kind of band.
And I think he plays in another kind of metal band for right now, just for fun.
One of the most profound influences on me as a drummer is Mark Godet. Like
a lot of people. Like I
love playing. Like even on like Woke Myself Up. I knew like the second I played it. Like that's a Julie Doran song that you worked on.
Yeah. Well, he was just the most original person in Moncton at the time when we were just young, and we were just like. We saw him play at in the early 91 or whenever he joined Eric's trip. Yeah. We were just like, maybe let's ask that older guy, because he was like 8 years older than me.
Right.
And at the time when you're 20, he's like, that's quite a bit.
Yeah. He was an adult.
Yeah,
he was a full-on adult. And
a nut, so we were like, oh, but he's such a good drummer. Let's see if he wants to play with us.
What's the name of the record store?
It used to be Sam the Record Man.
Right, it was Sam.
Now it's Frank's.
Okay, Frank's. It went from Sam to Frank. Okay, so like and he was been doing that, since the 70s or 80s or something?
Oh, yeah. He had a punk band in like 74 or 6 or something. Like,
right.
There's film footage of him just as like this little kid with sock feet smashing the drums, like playing the drums. Like he's the real thing.
He is, absolutely. So, okay, well, I mean, yeah, that explains sort of Elevator. Then,
but he stuck out in the grunge era too. We were, when Eric's trip was touring, like, everyone had those big grunge drum sets, and stuff, and he had this little jazz Slingerland set.
Yep.
And I think right from the first time anyone saw him, people were like, wow, like, he's fun to watch.
He's like Animal a little bit, like just a ferocious, but like,
quick wrists, like lots of more jazzy influence, which a lot of people in the grunge era didn't have.
Right.
So it was nice.
And you had him playing almost hardcore beats in some ways, right?
Yeah, with wild fills that he would add.
Just amazing fills. Yeah. It reminds me, actually. Do you remember Gary Young from Pavement, the first drummer?
Oh yeah, like because he had that same era, like more of a bit of a jazzy background, like
just the fills were not usual.
Yeah,
like just suddenly you'd have these big cool fills, and I
love that. Yeah,
those two guys.
I learned how to play drums from Mark too.
Mark,
like, it's a lot of the same influence. Like it's because when I go to play, I hear what Mark would do in my head.
Yeah. So you would basically do most of everything in Eric's trip on some level, like they were kind of a lot of the songs and the way they came off were your conception.
And I think that was just because I had so much coming out of me, I think, compared to the other guys, that
right.
When Chris would come up with stuff too, he would just put it more to his side project, because I think he knew I was just coming up with so much for
You're
Eric's
prolific.
Trip.
Yeah. So was that a similar approach in Elevator, or was that more democratic, so to speak? Like, did other people have more input in
No, Elevator was even less, I think, because Elevator was, Mark and Tara were more just like behind me more.
Right.
Where
that was you.
Eric's trip, I more felt like I should give Chris and Julie more opportunity for their songs. Like, I didn't want to hog it all too much, because to me, being the songwriter on an album isn't it's not like you're doing all the work. It's more like it's the fun part, really.
Right.
Because I wrote every song for Eric's trip pretty much, but I also shared, the royalties all 25%.
It was a band,
each.
yeah. It was a real band.
Because I realized they're doing as much hard work as I am. I'm
Yeah.
just having the fun part,
Right. So what about the transition from Elevator to what? I mean, it's been called Rick White album. It's been called. How many names have you had for your solo endeavors? I can't remember.
The Elevator changed quite a bit because it was like a concept thing. We were trying to go from Elevator to Hell to
through Hell, and then
Sub Pop
Elevator.
didn't like that. And it's bad now when you try to find it on iTunes or in record stores because every album has a different band name.
There's there's at least one new band called Elevator now. I think they spell it with 2 L's.
Yeah, they put the 2 L's, yeah.
There's like stuff going on.
Brian was making fun of them pretty good. trying to hassle them enough that they would change it, but they went with it.
I think they'd actually, that's a name change in itself. They had a different name and they changed it to that. Anyway, my point is, so Rick White, as yourself, you've had a few different names.
I called Rick White album for just the, that trilogy sort of albums I did through the 2000s.
What were they called again? What was Memory?
Rick White album was the first,
right?
And then Memory Reaper and 137.
137. What is 137? What is the significance of that?
It has a lot of sort of scientific kind of and biblical and different. It has a lot of different mathematical reasons. I think that's why it was just a very openly symbolic number. I think that people could look up.
Okay, I don't know much about. I know
it's
we
mostly
are
like a prime numbers kind of math sort of thing for physicists.
Okay,
that's mainly why I took it. But also over the years I've found out it has religious kind of things too, like numerology.
Okay.
Different stuff like that.
So you put out this trilogy. Did you play many shows in support of any of that?
No, just a few, just solo sets.
Sets. Okay.
I played that show you're talking about with the Blue Fog show with $100 as my band.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was at that.
And I think we did a set in Sappy too with them playing behind me too. But that was pretty much the only shows I did for those records.
And are those kind of is that the gist of the Rick White album sort of arc?
Yeah.
Those 3 records?
Yeah.
And the last one came out in
2009.
Right.
And then I did some other work for other records of like producing.
You produced like $100 and
$100 and like Super Fantastics, this band from Halifax. I did a bit of work with Hot Kid.
Right.
And then I did Julie's So Many Days record, and then I decided to stop for a while.
So this brings us finally to the Hermitage, like why we're here. Well, not why we're here. This is obviously beautiful. Anyone would want to live here, and it's beautiful. But why have you? I don't want to call you a recluse because you're sitting right in front of me, and I'm with you here. But you did kind of.
You're the first person that's visited me probably in years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, so that must be purposeful. Why have you kind of retreated into the
background?
What do you want to say about it? I mean, people. I will say. I'll just tell you, Rick. So every once in a while, in a blue moon, I'll say, "Hey, who?" to the people listening or whatever. Who do you want on the show? Your name comes up every time. People want to know what you're up to and what you're doing and all that stuff. And I do too. I mean, you know this. I've asked you over the years to talk or whatever or to do things. So it's obviously a show of genuine love. We miss you.
And I always appreciate that, which is why I kind of still share stuff, online, or I do comments on Facebook or something.
Right.
I try to at least still be a part of.
That's right. You're not that reclusive. Like I know.
Well, I try to still be. I try to not lose complete contact with everybody. Even though I don't physically like to go really anywhere anymore.
Well, is any of this I can't tell, because among the things you've been doing beyond the stuff you just said is you have been tending to your archives. You've been finding old video footage and audio stuff. You're trying. You don't seem disenchanted with music, at least from your past. But are you somewhat disenchanted?
I was for a while, like over the last 10 years. After I did that Julie record, I sort of I wasn't able to make my own music anymore. I feel like I was questioning it too much, or I was coming up with nothing was really inspiring me, and that's what I said when I started making physical art through those little trucks and things.
Yeah, again, I have to see these trucks. I'm
and driving them around,
Yeah.
It was giving me a different kind of satisfaction of creation because it was so mechanical and more like I just could make these things and I didn't have to analyze them like you would poetry or a song,
Sure.
which can go anywhere. Like you could, if you think too much about making music, like music has to just come out of me, no problem, I think, to be good. And for a while I was thinking too much about it, maybe at the end, like trying to think like, what should I do to be better, you know, make it cooler. But it wasn't coming out just naturally anymore. So
do you that cooler thing that you just said, is that so that it would resonate with the people who are going to listen
just
to
like
it?
What should you do? What should I do next? Like how can I move on to what do I want to do, you know? And
like, do you see a huge distinction between, I know we've talked about your evolution and how you started, but it could be said that the aesthetic that you've started with is kind of always been the same. Like you haven't made a trip hop record.
No, it's true. Exactly.
You kind of knew yourself at some point, and that's the kind of music you make.
But
I mean, it's different.
I don't like talking. I'm not saying when I bring up acid, my acid era.
Sure.
In the late '90s, when I did it quite a bit for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But it really changed my perspective on creation because it made me connect to a way to create unconsciously in a way. Like I could just, I don't know, like when I paint, I could look at a blank canvas and see it and then just trace it.
Right.
And it was like that with music. Like I would just go into a songwriting without any idea of what I was going to make. I would just sit there, play a guitar track, add some lyrics, and I'd come up with these really neat songs, you know. Sometimes the best ones would be the ones that would come out the easiest. But then that just sort of stopped eventually, you know.
You didn't have that.
Well, I think I just maybe got bored of it in a way, like, or I wanted to try something new with my, like, am I just a songwriter? You know, like I want to make other stuff, and plus making psychedelic records only is appealing to a certain small percentage of people.
Right.
And I think when I started making these truck videos, these little model truck videos, I was getting across to all kinds of people, like old people, kids.
I haven't. So, like I say, I haven't. I want to see the videos too, actually, to be honest. But like, But it was just refreshing to like have this audience who was like all kinds of people. Like all of a sudden, I was just, and they were getting such pleasure in watching these childlike little cool videos with cats in them. Like I was making pretty cute videos. So that's great. That's awesome. I know you're a cat guy. I'm a cat guy. But that, you use the word psychedelic, and I know that has different connotations for different people. Yeah. And obviously it might even have an acid or drug connotation. But is there anything about those truck videos and those they're
very psychedelic.
Are they
too.
psychedelic?
Yeah,
okay.
In a way, you know, because they're like these little trucks going through these mini trails in the woods, you know.
Yeah. Like your Sadie's artwork, like your album artwork, everything, like the drum, what do you call that stuff? When you used to draw the stuff for Belitsky's drum kit. The drawings, you know, they're drawings, I guess. The artwork that you've done always had that kind of whatever. Again, I'm using the term psychedelic, and whatever people's understanding of that term is, it's fine. But it had that kind of vibe. So that is part of you. Like, are you still, like, is acid still a part of your aesthetic?
Well, I haven't done it since like 99 or 2000.
Right. But there's something about that.
It stays with you for sure. Like that. But I think it's even without doing acid, it's just my mindset from when I was a kid. Even, you know, I've always been a dreamy sort of creative type, you know. And so once I found pot or acid, it just really was like, oh, this goes right along with what you're into, you know. Like, you like seeing things all colorful and neat, you know. Like, It was always more, which is what always kept me away from hard drugs and bad drugs, you know.
Right. So are you still, like I mentioned some of the work you've done for the Sadies, are you called upon to do artwork for people?
Sometimes. I mean, for like last 5 years or so, I started doing pet portraits.
Yes, they're beautiful. Yeah.
Which got me a little more into painting, because I feel like when I was younger too, I would paint just quick and fast, you know. But with those, I started more concentrating on, you know, making, you know, really detailed little paintings. So that was good for my brain, I think, for a while.
Have you thought about doing like prints of those things?
Yeah, well, we've flirted with it. We just never.
I don't know how that works.
To do it, I know. It's like you gotta get them made.
Mass producing.
There's one of our cat, Curtis, playing the drums.
They're amazing. Like
a lot of people have wanted a copy of that one. So hopefully eventually we'll do that.
You know, I gather that even in your supposed, you know, Howard Hughes phase that people think you're in, where you're kind of, you know, secluded. I feel like you like you say, you're really outgoing on that level. On social media, like that seems to be a landscape that you like. Yeah,
it's fun. I just don't like really being. I think it's like a safety of your home thing, like where you just feel like, well, this is where everything is, and if you don't feel good, like here's your bed, here's your bathroom, here's, you know, like it's like some kind of anxiety about being out and away from my safe zone or something.
Well, you mentioned Brian.
But usually once I'm out, it mellows out and I'm okay. It's just leaving. Sometimes.
Yeah. You meant like you live here with Brian, who I don't want to say anything that makes him uncomfortable, but his presence on social media is pretty upset with humanity. I would describe it as. Like, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff,
but it's all jokey. Like,
it's all jokes. Like he works in a record store, and he has to deal with the clientele. But I know anytime I post anything about driving and being frustrated with other people, he's like, yes, like,
oh yeah,
I can't handle this. And so
I get to hear his calls on his drive home. Somebody calls and he's just yelling at people. Yeah, it's funny.
So the humanity is difficult. I'm getting at. Like, you're not incorrect in saying, yeah, it's hard to be out there among people.
Yeah.
But some of us can deal with it a bit better than others, I suppose. Anyway,
I would like to get back to it. It's just, it feels like it's hard habits to break. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I hear you. Well, so
especially when you have this beautiful place to just be.
It's gorgeous. I don't even see why you'd ever leave here. If you can do trucks and make your art and make music whenever you want, like, why would you leave? I know, it makes sense. I recently purchased through the mail your new record, Rick White and Eins Sof. Where in your trajectory have you? And then I also got some Eric's Trip Rarities record that I didn't know existed.
The bootleg one.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. So
I printed that up for one of our reunion tours, I think in 2007 or something. And
you found a box of them or something? Is that what?
Yeah, there was another box here. We just had to make a few more covers.
Right.
We found a box of vinyls that were like, we might as well let's make these available again for a bit, and we sold them out pretty quick.
Yeah, people are interested.
Yeah,
and then I try to stay off social media more these days, but I happened to see your Instagram or Facebook post about it. So all this to say, we mentioned the Rick White album Trilogy, and you said you started to slow down with music generally in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Is this record with Eins Off the first expression of yours in some time? Is that right?
Around that same time, I did 137. I produced her record for her. She just kind of contacted me out of the blue and said, would you be into mixing my record?
She's from Waterloo or something?
Yeah.
Or Kitchener or something?
And I didn't really know her. I knew her because she did play with Kate Boothman and Tara a bit in a band once in the early 2000s. They had I
can't remember what
Priscilla's,
it was called. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
She was in that for a little while, and I think I had met her maybe a couple times. But anyway, out of the blue, she got in touch with me to mix her record for her, and I just really liked the music. She was one of the more creative and beautifully voiced, people I had mixed before. And
this is 10 years ago?
Yeah, it would have been 2009 or 10.
Okay, yeah.
And ever since, we've just stayed in touch on, chatting on Facebook and stuff, and gotten to really love each other. In a way where we really understand each other, because she's very like-minded in a way, very kind of creative, far out person,
right?
And
I've seen her perform, I think, twice, and I got that impression. Yeah.
Just really neat creative person, and we just always talked about I said, well, one day I'm going to make some songs, and then we'll make a record together. Oh yeah, cool,
right?
Just joking about it, and not joking, but planning for the future. But I just didn't do it for so many years, and then I think last fall, all of a sudden I was like, I feel like recording something, and I set up my Pro Tools machine again, and we had it all set up, and I started fiddling with a bit of recording, and then I was like, I'm going to send Melissa this track, because
you did everything.
I
played everything.
I'd recorded most of the music and stuff, and just said can you add stuff to this track? I want to see what it sounds like, and she added her vocal to it all and a bunch of neat synth stuff, and then I was just set. I now have all these ideas.
Yeah.
For what I could do with you,
you need a partner a little bit. I mean, we talked about
it really
how you
brought out that.
Yeah.
And I would never tell her what to do. I would send her the next track, which would just not be completely done, but I would have a vocal and most of the bed tracks, music, and she would just add whatever she wanted, and I would get it back, and it'd be it'd be great, and I'd mix it, and we just did it all back and forth through the Google Drive, sending files back and forth.
Have you ever met? You two?
We only met a couple times.
Oh, you have met?
Physical,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd heard that you hadn't even met, and when you
not for this record. Yeah.
You didn't meet to talk about. Okay.
We
to
did
work
the
on
whole
the
record just through messages.
File sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. It's called The Opening?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think it's just the start of a new cycle, kind of like, because it ends, the record ends with the opening song, like back around again, like, and like I said, we started the record without an idea, but it just sort of, I'm just always amazed how, I think maybe it's like I said, it's the way I make art by just subconsciously letting it come out of me that the whole record idea just worked out. Like all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, I'm seeing now what we've created is this like cycle of an idea of just coming back around and a new opening.
Does it speak to your own sense of, I don't mean to be an English student here, but when you call something the opening after being away for so long, does it suggest you're opening up to maybe being more creative and making music again?
Yeah, I think it was the opening to a new mindset, kind of not even the same one I had before. It was like a new form of music creation, maybe.
Okay. That's promising to hear for us, like for people who like you. Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Well, we have ideas to do more too, I think. Yeah.
You and Eiyn Sof.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that what you think is going to be your primary mode of musical expression at the moment?
I don't know. I toy with the idea of maybe playing some shows with her again one day.
Oh, great.
Maybe next year.
Oh, that's great.
But it's up in the air, of course. I never want to be definite plans.
Yeah,
I'm bad with commitment a bit because then I feel like I'm held to things, but I got to get out of that mindset. So I am trying to change a bit.
Can I ask you, if you think about it, what did you like the most about performing? Because you mentioned the rockiness towards the end of Eric's trip, but you also mentioned how much you toured with Elevator. So there's aspects of performing that and you've done a few other things. I think I'm trying to figure out if you like performing, and when you talk about the tentative plans for next year, like, do you have a warm memory of, is there any warmth in your memories of performing live, or is it all stress and frustration or whatever?
No, I liked playing the shows. I didn't like the traveling part of it, or like I still wake up sometimes from those what I call tour dreams.
Oh, really?
But it's always like...
It's traumatizing for you.
I know, but it's always like, where are we going to park the van? We're worried about the vans somewhere, It's always like those kind of weird dreams. It usually has nothing to do with the playing.
Do you have any close calls on Eric's trip with stolen equipment or anything like that?
No, we were very lucky. We got a van broken into once with Elevator, but it was empty at the time.
Oh, good.
We just got the window broken out.
Right.
But yeah, we always said good luck.
So there's no specific thing that has traumatized you. It's the fear.
Yeah.
Rick, I have it too, and it's something I've had to confront. In my own way, I try to be a self-starter or try to do everything myself the way you do, as much as I can feel like I'm capable of doing. And I've come to terms with the fact that it's a bit of control. It's a controlling thing. I get anxious because I can't control everything. Do you? And
you can do it all in your own time. You can just sort of... when you're making your own stuff,
But I think that I guess what I'm saying is I discovered it about life. When I'm like, like the same way I feel the need to do all the stuff myself and not rely on others or not be put in positions where I'm uncomfortable. Or if I worry too much, like when my mom was sick, that's what a psychologist told me. Is like she said you're worrying about stuff you can't control at all,
and that's my problem with anxiety.
Yeah, you've got it too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I don't know if that helps you, but I can commiserate with what you're going through, and I'm not trying. This is not a therapy session.
I know. My anxiety is mostly to do with just the normal things everyone goes through getting older. Different body pains and weird shit happening to your bodies, and and it scares me because I'm still like that little kid. We're all still that little kid inside who's just like, what's happening?
Right. It is frustrating that our bodies decide they're going to break down at some point.
I know,
You're just like, why? Why are you doing this? I'm fine. Like the
40s have been just one thing after the other, but I hear that from everybody.
I'm 41. I'm going through the same thing, and I'm dealing with it every day a little bit. I don't mean to depress anyone, but it's true. And particularly for me, like when my mom got sick, that was like a weird, this is in our family. This could happen to me or my kids. Spiraling out of what is it called? I think it's called looping. You loop the problem and you don't get out of it. Yeah. Anyway,
feedback.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, despite everything we were just talking about, you're in a pretty good spot. You're in a good place.
Yeah, I think so. Just trying to day to day.
Yeah. Is there more? We mentioned the Unintended thing coming out. Any other surprises? Anything on your YouTube channels that we should look at?
I don't know. Brian and I are always flirting with putting out some old stuff on vinyl. Now that we're making records, and we have, there's at least a couple hundred people out there who like to buy the stuff we put out.
Blue Fog seemed to be pretty prolific. Maybe 10 years ago, around the time of that review.
We just stopped doing it.
Stopped doing it, but is it sort of back?
It seems to be.
Yeah.
I've been, since I've gotten more into making music and stuff again, like we were talking about performing a while ago, and I wanted to say, like, I do have problems with performing. Like, sometimes when I watch other bands, like, the whole act of performing is silly a bit to me. Like, it's kind of show-offy in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, hey, let's get on stage in front of a bunch of people and over-exaggerate our enthusiasm.
That's true.
For people. And I just cringe when I watch most footage of bands, which is silly because I used to do it too.
Well, the most hilarious thing for anyone to...
There's footage of me shaking my hair around.
Well, no, I'm sure you were into it.
Playing guitar solos.
You didn't think you were... Did you think, you were putting that on? I just think
that's just it. At the time, you're just like you're just doing it. But I think now that I'm older and I watch it, I think it's silly, to watch it.
The funniest distinction is watching a band sound check and watching them play live. And the only experience I've seen it many, many times because of, just having to be at places early. But I was really struck by, I once got to see a Shellac sound check in Detroit, and it was just as intense as the show they put on a few hours later. Like, it was just as they were into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. So, and I have to remember that you are a performer. You're putting on a show.
Absolutely.
To give a good show to people.
Yeah. So I don't think you're overthinking things. Those are things you have to think about as a musician, as a performer. So it's a lot to think about. Okay, but there might be shows. And there might be more stuff. And
I'd like to do some more stuff.
And your Bandcamp page, where can people learn more about that?
It's Rick White Archive.
Okay.
On Bandcamp. And what else?
Is there a Blue Fog one or something?
No, I was going to say my main YouTube channel is just the RC Trucks.
RC Trucks.
But it's Headquake 137.
Headquake 137 is the name of it.
If you want to watch crazy remote-controlled truck videos with cats.
Well, I appreciate this. I know that you called one of your records, and I think even one of your, maybe on Instagram, your Memo Reaper, right?
Yeah.
That memory thing that you have as an archivist is fascinating to me. Like, you are very invested in the act of remembering.
Well, I think it's because I worry I don't remember, so I'm always trying to archive and keep stuff.
Yeah.
Like Mark Cadet has more of he can just recall stuff so easy, and I find my memory is quite not good.
Right.
And some of my family members I hope I don't get it too, but they're going through that, losing their memories with different things.
Yeah.
And so I hope by using that name, I'm not losing my memory too. But I do. That's, I think, why I like to keep track of it all and keep it all in one spot.
Yeah. I'm distracted by the blue jay. That is eating. That's lovely. It's a beautiful blue jay eating your bird seed there.
Yeah, they're kind of bullies though, those guys.
Yeah, I've heard that. Actually. Yeah.
Although he throws all half the seeds on the ground, but then the chipmunks get them, so that's nice.
Do you recognize this blue jay? You said you see the same one all the time. Is that that's not possible?
I don't know. You got to tag it. Some cardinals too, and a lot of these little guys.
Cardinals are nice.
Yeah,
they're not
and they're always in a couple. It's always like this guy
sweet.
And the couple.
Anyway, sorry, distracted. Yeah, I think you're right about memory stuff, and it is what it is. But I appreciate that you. I'm an archivist of some kind too, and I appreciate that you do that.
It's good. We have to remember all the stuff we made in our past too, and think good of it.
Yeah, I think so too, and you learn from it. Like you said, you actually learn from where you came from.
God, going through all those old DAT tapes I did last month or whatever was like. I was hearing, because I recorded so many songs, like I would record at least 1 or 2 songs a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes through the 90s, and no memory of them whatsoever. So when I'm listening to a lot of these DATs, I'm hearing songs that are like wow, I've never heard this song before.
There's a reason it's called.
Great.
There's a reason it's called recording. Like, you're actually recording something and capturing something that you're going to revisit at some point. Right?
I know.
It's record keeping.
And like some of the songs were put on an album, and I do remember them. Where the next song on it is just as good, but it wasn't ever on an album.
Right. Is the record you made with Eins Off available digitally? Is it on?
Yeah, it's on Bandcamp now. Oh, and we also finally got that on all the different streaming stuff.
Is it on Apple?
I think it's on
Spotify and all that stuff.
I think it is now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is there a song from maybe that we could go out on? Is there something you would pick? Anything that comes to mind?
Maybe the song "Oh Where." It's a song on the side too that Melissa and I both, one of our favorites. It's kind of about, a lot of the record is about our relationship too, the way we made the record.
Yeah.
So far apart from each other, so it's like some kind of ghost love, like we're making this neat record together, but do we even really both exist?
Yeah,
we're just making this cool.
Right.
It was a neat process for sure.
Okay, let's hear that. This is "Oh Where" by Rick White and Eiyn Sof from the new album The Opening. And Rick, I hope I've conveyed to you how meaningful it is that you had me over. And
thanks, man.
I really appreciate this talk, and I wish you the best luck with everything.
Thank you. You too.
Crawling through my hair as I'm not there, but where, oh where, oh where, fingers touch the air as I just stare, but where, oh where, oh where.
Wow, very special thanks to Rick White for appearing on this, the 500th episode of Creative Control. This is meaningful to me. Thank you for listening to this podcast and this episode of this podcast, which is part of the E1 Podcast Network and is available on all iOS and Android platforms and all sorts of other things too. YouTube, Spotify, Audio Boom. It's all over the place. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for on any of those things, or you want to learn more about me, sign up for my semi-regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit my website, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter @vishcreative, or follow me @vishkhanna. Listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at CFRU.ca, or on an actual radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Also visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. Thanks again to Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to my friend Jim Guthrie for supplying me with a song to play while I'm saying stuff like this. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you. Thank you very much for listening to this episode with Rick White. I hope you learned things about Rick. And thanks for listening to the show and telling your friends to listen to the show and subscribing to the podcast and all those sorts of things. It means a lot. And yeah, here's to 500 more somehow. I probably shouldn't be the one saying that. We'll see. We'll keep going though. Thank you. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.